you very much, Chris, and what an honor it is to be back again. For those who were not here last week, we began a two-part series on Isaiah 53. Now, there's a danger in that doing that with a group that is knowledgeable as FOI people are and Jewish believers and so forth that ho hum Isaiah 53 again. But what I want to do, I tried to point out some fresh things last week, but also it's not bad to look at something again that we already know something about. But this week, we're going to build on what we laid last week, some understanding about the servant in Isaiah. The passages in Isaiah that speak about the servant as Israel, there's a few of them, but then there's others, even more than them, that speak about someone who is in Israel, you might say an Israelite, who is the servant with a capital S, you might say, the Eved Adonai, the servant of the Lord. And this, he's an individual who is not just Israel, but he is in Israel, and he where Israel falls short, the God's servant, Yahweh's servant, is successful and fulfills. So we had a good question last week in Isaiah 49. There's one verse that says, Israel, my servant. But just a couple of verses later, it says, you are my servant to bring back Israel to me. So it looks like the servant with a capital S, the one that is described in Isaiah 53, is God's servant who fails when Israel, as God's servant, you might say with a small s, fails. And so it comes to a culmination, not only in Isaiah 53, 1 to 12, but as we're going to see tonight, beginning in Isaiah 52, 13 through 15, there's not only the three verse stanzas in Isaiah 53, there's a fifth three-verse stanza right at the end of chapter 52, where he says, my servant. And then later in 53:11, he says, my servant. I spoke last week of bookends. You put books in there in the middle and put bookends there to hold them together. There's a more technical name for that, inclusio, but we can call it bookends. So my servant, Isaiah 52 and 13, and Isaiah 53:11 are the bookends for this fourth and final servant song, as we call them in Isaiah. And here is the culmination. Here is the fulfillment of all of those hopes and plans and prophecies about the Lord's servant in the previous passages in Isaiah. So with a little help from our PowerPoint, we're going to look at a couple of slides as a review of last week, and I'll just point them out to you very quickly. No, I'm not a great fan of Michelangelo or Raphael, but I am struck. Excuse me, I'm not a fan of the religious background of Michelangelo and Raphael, just in case you're wondering. But I am struck by every time in the Renaissance art that these artists portrayed Isaiah. Isaiah always has a scroll or a book. And there's always angels there as well. In Isaiah 6, we read about the seraphim round about the throne, the angelic host. And also, we read that it's Isaiah that particularly wants to point us to the Torah and the prophets for this promise of a Messiah. So you can see in Michelangelo's portrayal of Isaiah on the ceiling of the chapel there in Rome, you see that book there. Isaiah is always pictured with a book or a scroll. I think Raphael's a little bit closer to it. They didn't have books in Isaiah's day, as we call them. They had scrolls, and you can see there a reference to Isaiah 26:2 in a scroll that Raphael's Isaiah is portraying. So let's see what is in that scroll. In the scroll of the book, it is written for me. Let's go to the next one. I just want to mention the two main terms that are used for the Messiah in Isaiah is the son and the servant. We don't have time to look at Isaiah 7 through 12. I do think I would just suggest for those who get stuck on Isaiah 7 and they wonder, is this really Isaiah's son, or is it Hezekiah's son, or whose son is it, or is it the son of the Lord? That you see Isaiah 7 to 11, Isaiah 7 to 12 as one whole picture, as the messianic section of Isaiah there, because he not only talks about the Messiah in chapter 7, verse 14, but look over in chapter 9, where he says about this child, Emmanuel, God with us, wonderful counselor, mighty God, Father of eternity, Prince of Peace. So Isaiah speaks more about this wonderful child. Some have actually called Isaiah 7 through 12 the book of Emmanuel. So as you're struggling with Isaiah 7:14 and Betula and Alma and the meaning there, keep in mind that in the larger section of Isaiah 7 to 12, he's talking about Emmanuel, and Emmanuel is that coming Messiah. We move to Isaiah 42 to 53, and particularly we'll zero in, as we did last week, on Isaiah 53, one who is submissive, silent, sinless, and a substitute. Let's get to that slide, please. In Isaiah 53, we're still reviewing from last week. Keep that in mind. We're still reviewing, but we're going to ask the question, can this only be a description of Israel? I mentioned to you a couple of rabbis that I've had an opportunity to witness to on this, and they've come and they've lectured to our IBEX students in Israel, and they say, well, Isaiah 53 is really Israel suffering. Well, can this really be Israel? Because Isaiah 53 is talking about him and we, him and Israel, him and his people. Isaiah 53 distinguishes between the servant and the people for whom the servant suffers and dies. No, it's not just it's not Israel's suffering, and we don't want to deny that. We want to affirm that the Jewish people have suffered. We do not want to minimize that. We do not want to criticize that. But what we want to say is, as much as they have suffered, Isaiah 53 is not describing them. He's describing somebody within Israel who suffers for Israel. He is led as a sheep to the slaughter, and as a lamb before her shearers is dumb, so he opened not his mouth. He goes as a sheep to the slaughter, and as a lamb before his shearers is dumb, so he opened not his mouth. He dies for Israel. Okay, so he's submissive, he's silent, he's sinless, and he's a substitute. Now you say, well, Dr. Varner, I know all that. You went over that last week. I've learned that in Friends of Israel studies. Tell me something new. Well, maybe there's something in verses 10 to 12 that you haven't seen. And I want to zero in on that. Would you please look at the first point that I want to point out in Isaiah 53, verses 10 through 12. Okay, in Isaiah 53, next point, please, is, okay, I'll read the text, Isaiah 53:10, while she advances it to the next point. Isaiah 53:10, it was the will of Yahweh or the Lord to crush him. He has put him to grief. When he makes his soul an offering for sin, he shall see his seed. He shall prolong his days. The will of the Lord will prosper in his hand. In verse 9, we see how he does that. He made his grave with the wicked and with a rich man in his death, although he had done no violence, nor was there any deceit in his mouth. Many translations from the KJV on says this, and he made his grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death. The wicked and with the rich, implying that his grave was with wicked people, but his grave was also with rich people. But unfortunately, those who translate it that way from the KJV on have missed the point that the word rich in verse 7 is actually singular. It is the Hebrew word ashir. So the Hebrew word for wicked is plural. Those of you who studied Hebrew know that for masculine plural, you add an im and im. So he made his grave with the wicked, the reshaim, that's plural. But he was with a rich man, Ashir, in his death. Now, that's very clear in the Hebrew. And our translations ought to reflect that. Some do, some don't. They should, because a very important point is being made there. Now, what is that point? I ask you to recall the Jewish burial practices. Jews have always honored the dead, and they take care of the dead person. Jewish people have been concerned about burial. A body would not be left to die on the cross overnight. They could not be buried with other people who were strangers. Reverent hands would take a Jewish person that had died, take that body, wash it, anoint it, and bury it in a proper tomb. Victims of crucifixion, however, did not have those privileges. Their bodies were usually cast into a common grave with other thieves and robbers who had also been crucified. But there was an exception to that practice in Jesus' case. Notice he was assigned to have a grave with wicked people. Maybe that guy on the cross next to him. Maybe that guy on the cross on the other side of him. He would be thrown into a common grave with those wicked people. He was assigned to be with wicked people, but he was actually with a rich man in his death. And for those readers of Luke 23, and many of our Jewish friends are not aware of this, say that it's clear that this practice of just throwing the crucified body into the graves with other crucified people was not followed. There was a man named Joseph of Arimathea. He was a follower of Jesus. It looks like he was a quiet follower of Jesus at this time, but he came forth and he interceded for the family and requested his body. Luke 23, 50 through 33. Thus, loving hands took the body of Jesus down from the cross. He was not cast into a tomb with other wicked people. No, they wrapped him, put him into the tomb that Joseph had supplied. Joseph was a rich man, thus fulfilling Isaiah 53:9. How else can we explain but by fulfillment of prophecy this amazing statement that he was appointed to be with wicked men, but he was a rich man in his death? And I also ask my Jewish friends, if this is Israel, what does this mean? He was Israel was appointed a grave with with wicked people, but Israel was with a rich man in his death. It makes no sense if it's Israel, but it does make sense for readers of the Gospel of Luke who are aware that reverent hands took that body down and placed that body in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. What an amazing fulfillment of an amazing text. And maybe you've overlooked that. And if you haven't, may it thrill your heart again as to how wonderful this text is. Now, there's one more thing I want to point out in Isaiah 53 that you may not have seen. And it is down in that fourth section where the Messiah is described as a substitute. And let's have that slide. And I believe it's Isaiah 53:11. Now I'm going to begin to read at verse 10 because there's some good truth there, but I want to zero in on verse 11. Verse 10 says, "It was the will of the Lord to crush him. He has put him to grief. When his soul makes an offering for sin, watch, he shall see his offspring. He shall prolong his days." I once had a rabbi say to me, Isaiah 53 can apply to Jesus because it says he will see his offspring and he will prolong his days. We know that Jesus wasn't married. He did not have kids, and he didn't live, he didn't prolong his days. So he didn't live a long life. So therefore it can't be with Jesus. What do we say to that? When his soul makes an offering for sin, he shall see his seed. The word seed can mean posterity. It doesn't always mean physical posterity. In the messianic text of Psalm 22, we read that a seed shall serve him. A posterity shall serve him. So even Psalm 22 speaks about this seed are his spiritual posterity, his spiritual seed. That's what it's talking about. And also it says he shall prolong his days. No, that doesn't mean that he will live a long life. Notice that this is said, he will prolong his days after the chapter says he dies. Okay? He dies very clearly in verse 9 and the first part of verse 10. So this prolonging his days must apply to a time after his death. And I don't need to explain that to you. Prolonging his days means coming back to life. So does not only Isaiah 53 speaks about the death of the Messiah, it also very strongly implies, even declares, I would say, that he lives afterwards and he sees his followers afterwards and he prolongs his days afterward. Now let's get to verse 11. Out of the anguish of his soul, he shall see and be satisfied. Now, almost every single English translation says that. And here's why. Because that's what the Hebrew says in the Masoretic text. He shall see and be satisfied. But notice, no object is mentioned about what he shall see. He shall see and be satisfied. He shall see what? Well, in 1947, in the late decade of the 1940s, in the early 1950s, no less than 800 various manuscripts of the Bible and other Jewish writings were discovered in and around Qumran. They are referred to as the Dead Sea Scrolls. By and large, they affirm what we have in the Hebrew Masoretic text. There's no contradictions. What we have in the Hebrew Masoretic text goes back to ancient days. So we have that assurance from the Dead Sea Scrolls. But there are a few differences. And the differences are not contradictions, but they add some things that I think are very, very important. In the Isaiah scroll that is in the Shrine of the Book, the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, and I've seen that marvelous manuscript, full copy of Isaiah. It says this: Yir or. Now, I don't know how your Hebrew is, but Yir is he shall see, or is light. Says that very clearly. This is a Hebrew manuscript that not only is prior to the Hebrew Masoretic text, it's prior to the New Testament. It was copied by Jewish scribes prior to the first century AD. And this is what it says when his soul makes an offering for sin, year or he shall see his seed, his offspring, and he shall prolong his days. Verse 11, out of his anguish, his soul he shall see. I misspoke myself. Here it says, year or he shall see light. He shall see light. Verse 10 says, he shall see his seed. Verse 11 says, out of the anguish of his soul after he dies, he shall see light and be satisfied. Now, the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, which I might say is prior to the New Testament. So the Greek translator must have had a Hebrew text before him that said this. Also mentions the word light, phos in Greek. So here are two pre-Christian texts, pre-Masoretic texts that add something, doesn't contradict anything, but it adds something. What shall the Messiah see? What shall the Messiah see? He shall see his offspring, and he shall see light. Verse 10, he shall see seed, his offspring, and verse 11, he shall see light and be satisfied. Now, that doesn't contradict anything in Isaiah 53, but it adds something really precious to our understanding of Isaiah 53. These texts not only say that Messiah dies, but he will see light, he will come back to life. And also in verse 11, it says, he shall see light. He shall see light and be satisfied. He shall see his seed. There'll be followers. And also he shall see light. What that means is the light of life. The psalmist says, you will show me the light of life. So after he dies, he will see the light of life and be satisfied. Wow, that is amazing, isn't it? He will see his seed. He will see light and be satisfied. By his knowledge shall my righteous servant justify many. By seeing his seed and seeing light, it teaches that not only the servant will suffer and die for Israel, but he will come back alive. He's put in a grave of a rich man, but he will come back alive. He will see light, year or, and he will see his seed, Zerah. So this is my servant. Now, that's some things that maybe you've not seen in Isaiah 53. The more when I wrote my book, The Messiah, Revealed, Rejected, Received, which is mostly chapters that I wrote for Israel, My Glory. I'm revising this book right now, and hopefully in the next 4 or 5 months, a republication of this book will take place. Stay tuned. When I wrote that, there were some of those things, particularly he shall see light and be satisfied, that I was not aware of. So I became aware of the Dead Sea Scroll reading, or he shall see light, and I've put it in my new edition of the Messiah, Rejected and Received, that will be published in the next few months. Now, that's some fresh things from Isaiah 53. Before I end, and maybe take some questions, I want to say something personal. I'm a Gentile. I'm a goy. Okay. You say, what's a goy like you doing this crazy stuff about Jewish people? Well, I tell you, it wasn't because of my upbringing. I never knew a Jewish kid when I went to school. Never knew a Jewish kid. I remember there was a Jewish jeweler in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Caution Gray was the name of it. Kosh, he was a Jewish guy. I actually bought a ring from him one time. But that was the only Jewish guy I knew. Didn't go to school with any Jews, didn't play ball with any Jews, wasn't in clubs with any Jews. I didn't know any Jews at all. When I was at Bob Jones and I went out witnessing, I started to run into Jewish people for the first time in Charlotte, North Carolina, Asheville, North Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina. And I began to witness to them. I never witnessed to them before. I was saved at the end of my junior year in high school, not knowing anything about Jews. So I got to know them. Went to Philadelphia. There I'm getting close to the Friends of Israel, where I ended up for 17 years. But as I was a pastor, I would visit, and oftentimes there would be a Jewish person in the room with my church member. And as I would pray with my church member, I would ask the Jewish person if I could also pray with them. Well, fortunately, I had taken some Hebrew, I had taken some modern Hebrew, so I would pray and also include a Hebrew prayer for that Jewish person. On more than once, I opened my eyes to see that Jewish person in the bed crying, thankful that this Gentile Christian minister would remember them. Well, I took courses. I got a master's degree in Judaic studies there in Philadelphia, and one thing led to another, and I came with the Friends of uh, Israel. So, what's a goyish boy like you doing with Friends of Israel, and what's a goy boy? Go, I never heard of that. Goy boy, right? Doing that. You are in all of this Jewish stuff. Well, I fell in love with them. I went to Israel when I was a pastor, a grateful father because I took an interest in his son. He sent his son to Israel for the first time with excuse me, to see Israel, and he paid for my way. So my first time, it was a gift to me, and I went to Israel, and the bug bit me, and I've been going ever since. And so 52 trips later, uh, God be praised that I've been to Israel 53 times and still learning about the land and Jewish people. Now, why a goy? How could a goy? I want to show you something about this Jewish Messiah. This Messiah who died and rose again for the Jewish people in Isaiah 53. Okay? I want to show you something. Look, please, back at the previous Psalm, Isaiah 52, 13 through 15, and you see where this goyish boy, this goy boy, gets in. And if you're a Gentile out there, what's the next point that is going to be? We're going to actually go back to Isaiah. There it is. Notice when it says about the Messiah, he'll be exalted, his appearance will be marred. Now watch verse 15. So shall he sprinkle many nations. Kings shall shut their mouths because of him. Nations, kings. What? This Jewish Messiah who comes for the Jewish people, who dies for the Jewish people, who rises again for the Jewish people. This very, very Jewish book of Isaiah says, this servant will sprinkle many nations. That cleansing that is poured onto, sprinkled on to Jewish people as a rite of purification, he will, when he comes, this servant, he will sprinkle not only the Jewish people for cleansing, he shall sprinkle many nations, many goyim. I am so, so very thankful for that statement here, right in the heart of this very Jewish passage, where the servant of Israel dies for Israel. The goyim are not forgotten. Goyim are not forgotten. So this is very, very important, particularly for you out there who are Gentiles, Christians, lovers of Israel. Know that he's not only for the Jews, he's for the Goyim. He's not only for the Goyim, he's for the Yehudim, the Jews. He is for every one of us. And the sprinkling of cleansing is for every Jewish person who comes to him, and for every Gentile person, including this Goy from Spartanburg, South Carolina. I can only say, Baruch Hashem, blessed be the name.
Dr. Varner, I want to take some questions. So if you are listening right now and you're tuned in, we've got about 148 people on right now. We have a great group, and I've been seeing all of you write in. And so my question is this. A lot of times we're hearing people say, no, see, Jesus came and changed everything. Jesus came along and now he became the God of the Gentiles and the Jewish people, but we get rid of this old thing and we bring in this new thing. The Old Testament didn't talk about that. I think you just showed us that the Old Testament is full of passages that are always about God using the Jewish people to bring redemption to the world. Could Isaiah 53 highlight that?
Absolutely. And just even in the previous chapter in Isaiah 52, it says, the Lord has bared his holy arm before all of the nations, the Goyim, and all the ends of the earth will see the salvation of our God. But, here's the thing that's going to happen, that God is going to do that through the Jewish people. It's a Jewish Messiah, Jesus, born of Jewish heritage. The entire apostolate, the 12, and then Paul, these are Jewish guys that are doing that. And so these Jewish guys, some of whom are going out primarily to Israel, Peter says, we're going to be mostly for Israel. Paul, you can be for the Gentiles. Even when Paul is called the apostle to the Gentiles, you go through the book of Acts. Where's the first place he goes when he gets to a city? To the synagogue. And there he proclaims. He's probably recognized as a traveling rabbi. They say, Rabbi, go ahead, like he did in Antioch. And boy, were they surprised when he says, this Jesus has come along and he's for us, but he's also for the Goyim. And there's probably some Gentile God-fearers in the outer part of the synagogue there listening and saying, this Jewish Jesus is also for us. Yes, he's also for us, but he comes, this Gentile salvation comes through the Jewish people, through a Jewish Messiah. And these, for the first 100 years, I think most of those who were proclaiming the word, even among the Gentiles, were Jewish people who had come to believe in the Messiah. I look at Romans 9 through 11. Paul says at the beginning of Romans and at the end of the Romans that the scriptures foretold not only salvation for Israel, but salvation for the Gentiles. And so Romans 1 to 8, somebody might say, well, that's mostly for the Gentiles. And Paul says, now, wait a minute. God is not through with them. Romans 9 through 11. He is not, there's a remnant now according to the election of grace. A remnant of what? A remnant of Jewish people. So here's the apostle to the Gentiles saying God is not through with Israel. And then, of course, he comes to that amazing passage where he says God is taking out a people from the Gentiles right now, and but there's going to come a time when all Israel will be saved. And he quotes from the Old Testament. Out of Zion shall become the deliverer, shall turn away ungodliness from Jacob. So this Jewish apostle, the apostle to the Gentiles, never forgets the Jewish people and even sees the message for the Jewish people in the for the Gentile people in the Jewish scriptures, and
Hmm.
says it's the Jewish scriptures which says that God is not through with Israel. All Israel shall be saved, and that's a future hope even today, that the remnant is being gathered out of Israel, those who come to believe in a Jewish Messiah, but they're preparing the way for the full flood of Israel being saved. So this Gentile salvation is still mediated through a Jewish Messiah and Jewish scriptures. Uh, hey, it's not Gentile scriptures, if you want to call them that, if there is such a thing, that is speaking about the Gentiles. It's Jewish scriptures that are speaking about it, and by Jewish writers. How can you be anti-Semitic? How can you be, yeah, and how can you say, well, God is through with the Jews? Well, cut out enormous sections of the Old Testament if he's through with the Jews. But
Hmm.
not just that, cut out Romans 9 through 11. Cut out other sections of the New Testament if he's through with the Jews. No, he's not through with the Jews. And I'm so thankful that I can just be a small part of being a light, not only to the Gentiles, but being a light to Israel as well. Amen.
Preach it, brother. Preach it. We just went to church, people. Okay. Hey, I got a question here for you, Dr. Varner. This comes from Sem Pierre. Do you think Isaiah 53 could be connected with Zechariah 12, 10 through 14? Do you?
Absolutely. 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 Zechariah 9, 1 to 9 speaks about triumphal entry. Zechariah 12 speaks about that, the nations surrounding Jerusalem. And then right at the heart of that, he comes again and they shall look upon him whom they have pierced. Absolutely. 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 And if somebody says, well, Isaiah 53 is all by itself, no, it's not. Our friend brought up Zechariah 9 through 14. Uh, you know what? Yeah, I'll give a personal illustration that'll only take 45 seconds. I went to a seminary, well, maybe 46 seconds. I went to a seminary that was premillennial, okay? And in the prophets course, our premillennial prof said this. I want you to write a commentary on Zechariah 9 through 14, students, but I want you to write it from the perspective of an amillennialist, that God is through with the Jews, there's no future for the Jews.
That's genius.
To a person, to a student, we wrote that impossible to write commentary saying God is through with Israel. This only has to do. How can you make any sense of Zechariah 9 through 14? And to a person, we would always come back, and I had heard it before, that even stronger in our confidence that these prophetic scriptures spoke about Israel, because how can they speak about the Gentiles? Yeah, so I love that assignment that confirmed my premillennialism rather than made me into an amillennialist.
That's fantastic. All right, Lester Holier, excuse me if I said your name wrong, last name wrong, Lester. Have any of these Qumran scroll editions that you referred to been published in any recent translations of the Tanakh or the Hebrew
Translations
Bible?
of the Tanakh, have they been published in any translations of the Hebrew Bible?
I think by saying Tanakh, I think he maybe even is thinking an updated, modern
Well,
translation of the Old Testament.
all of the Dead Sea Scrolls have been translated. Well, not everything will scrap. There's a few scraps that haven't. But 99% of the Dead Sea Scrolls, particularly those intact scrolls, have been translated and they are published. You can just go online, Dead Sea Scrolls translate, translation of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Go on Amazon. You can find translations of that. And there are a few English versions that have where it says there, he shall see light. They'll say the Dead Sea Scrolls says he shall see light. He not just he shall see. There's a few translations that have incorporated insights from the Dead Sea Scrolls. Not all, but you can read your own translations. You can buy them. Dead Sea Scrolls in English. Okay.
How did that David Townsend from Canada, he brought up earlier when you're talking about the wicked men and the rich man, he was talking about how the NSB makes that distinction.
Good.
Now, the NSB and the LSB, and the reason I bring that up is because Dr. Varner was a part of the translation team,
Mhm.
probably more on the Greek side of things, if maybe, but how much of that is influenced in the LSB as well, Dr. Varner?
Yeah, yeah. I did primarily the New Testament. I was a consultant on the Old, but I was a primary translator on the New. With respect to my colleagues, I must say that they didn't change too many things in the Masoretic text.
Yeah.
There was great respect among my Old Testament colleagues for the Masoretic text. So the most that that would make would be in a footnote that he shall see. A footnote. Dead Sea Scrolls say he shall see light, or he shall see his seed. But not too many. The ESV incorporates some of the insights from the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, there's not a radical amount of them, okay? It's not like, oh my, because we didn't have the Dead Sea Scrolls, we haven't been able to understand the Bible. No, no, no. Uh, 99.5% of the time, the Hebrew manuscripts and the Dead Sea Scrolls confirm what we have. And when they don't confirm it, they don't add any contradiction that would cause us to doubt the Masoretic text. They may just add a word that maybe the Masoretic text is left out. So it's not like, you're going to be denied information if you don't have the Dead Sea Scrolls. But the Dead Sea Scrolls always confirm what the Old Testament says.
I think there's a lot of great room too in the future to see how the Dead Sea Scrolls can influence more modern translations as they
I
come.
think so too. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah.
I want to make sure we get Simeon. This comes from Margaret Reese down in Texas. My good friend Margaret. Hello, Margaret. Margaret. Simeon in Luke 2 recognizes Jesus was a light of revelation to the Gentiles and the glory of your people Israel. Thumbs up from the doctor right there, Margaret.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that out. You know what? I think that that's a result of Luke's interviews. You say, well, where did Luke get this? He has some things in Luke 1 and 2 that the other gospel writers don't have. I think when Paul was in prison in Caesarea, Luke was interviewing so many of these. Now, some of these were old people, or maybe it was people who knew Simeon. They said, Simeon said this. And Luke is writing this down. He's gathering this information. And I'm very, very thankful for Luke including that, because there's a wonderful statement. Thank you for bringing that out about the aged Simeon.
Brian Overholtzer, he asks a great
I
question.
don't know Brian Oberholzer. I don't want to talk to him.
It's a good thing it's a webinar and not a meeting right now, right?
Brian Oberholzer is my former student.
There you go. He says, Dr. Varner, I have heard that sprinkle in Isaiah 52:15 should be translated startle, startled. What is the best argument for sprinkle?
Yeah, yeah. The best argument for it is that it is a one meaning of the word, but also other translations have also supported the idea, ancient translations, that it means sprinkle there. Okay, I am aware of that. So shall he startle many nations. Even if it's startle and not sprinkle, and I do believe sprinkle's the best, what's going on there? That this Jewish Messiah servant will bring shock, will bring attention, will startle the nations. Now, how could a lowly Jewish servant startle the nations unless his message was radical and for them? So I can even take startle the nations as a messianic truth that when this Jewish Messiah comes, he's not going to be hidden in a corner of Israel and the world's not going to pay attention to him. If you want to choose startle, I prefer sprinkle. It's this. Oh my, who is this Jewish guy? He's for the nations too, and this servant startles the nations. So I think even then it has a messianic role, though I do prefer sprinkle.
Yeah, I'm with you, Dr. Varner, and because I actually think the conversation is in relationship to the purification process that goes back to Leviticus, goes back to Exodus and Numbers, and it's talking about the Gentiles, which was an issue in conversation in days of Jesus. When Peter receives that vision, he says, "Go to the Gentiles," and he goes, "I can't go to these people. I can't eat that food. I can't do that. These lips are clean lips, Lord." And he says, basically, they're clean now. They are clean. You can approach them, but the cleanness comes by way of purification and being sprinkled. So if you actually drop
Yep.
that word nazah back, it goes back
No,
to
I would
alternate
stand
blood.
for sprinkle, but even if it's startle, I think it still has messianic implications. That the Gentiles are going to be startled and sit up and take notice of this Jewish Messiah.
I love it. All right. I have time for one more here. I just want to say Aaron LeGrove from Canada says, this lesson is great. I just preached on Zechariah 12. So thank you, Aaron. I heard Bruce Locke says the ISR version has he shall see the results of his suffering and be satisfied. Any thoughts on this translation?
He out of the anguish of his soul he shall see a result. That is a commentator or a translator trying to put a direct object after see, but he may not be aware that a Dead Sea Scroll says he shall see a light and be satisfied. So he's just putting another direct object in there. But by putting another direct object, he's showing that there's got to be some object originally of he shall see. And we argue that he shall see light. Yir or in Hebrew very clearly says he shall see light.